The snow had begun hours before sunrise, so soft it seemed to hush the world. Even the rumble of the arriving train sounded muted beneath the thickening curtain of white. It wasn't busy at the station, just the usual early risers and those without homes, scattered like forgotten leaves on the benches. A hush clung to everything. The air smelled of metal, old bricks, and the faint perfume of snow. That was when Daniel saw her. He was stooping to pick up Lily's mitten, soft, pink, a little worn, when he noticed the figure on the far bench. A woman, barely more than a silhouette at first, sat stiffly. Her dress, white and once beautiful, clung to her like wet tissue. The hem was black with slush. A soaked veil was tangled around one arm. Her shoes were off, placed neatly beside her, as though she'd once cared about keeping something clean. Now, her bare feet curled inward like she was shrinking into herself. He handed Lily the mitten and followed her wide-eyed stare to the woman. "Daddy," Lily whispered, tugging his coat. "She's sad." Daniel didn't speak, but he looked again, deeper this time, and he saw more than just the strange dress or smeared makeup. Her face was hollow, her gaze cracked glass. She wasn't waiting for anyone, she'd been left. He almost turned away. Almost. But Lily lingered, and so did he. Daniel had learned to move quietly through the world, a shadow of a man in his late 30s. He bore no remarkable features, just a tired kindness behind his eyes. His beard was uneven, his hands were cracked from engine grease and winter air. At night, he worked under flickering garage lights, fixing cars until his back screamed. During the day, he scrubbed cafeteria floors and polished classroom windows. His daughter Lily was the only part of his life that glowed. 5 years old, with wild hair and a love for ladybugs, she carried light where Daniel couldn't. He had promised her mother, Anna, that he would keep their child smiling, and he had tried. Every day since that terrible night, Anna had died giving birth. A vein burst, they'd said, just one of those things. The words were soft, useless. He never blamed Lily, not really, but guilt was a quiet roommate, always hovering. He never spoke of it, he didn't need to. He carried Anna's photo everywhere, creased from years in his wallet. Her laughter was trapped inside his memory like a snow globe, shaken often, never broken. He hadn't loved anyone since, wasn't sure he ever would. The woman hadn't moved in half an hour. Her fingers were clenched around a crumpled paper that looked like it had been torn from a wedding card, or maybe a vow. Something with a rose-colored edge. Her mascara had run down her cheeks, not from crying, but from weather and time. Her hands trembled now and then, not from cold, though she was clearly freezing, but from something deeper. She didn't shiver. She just sat. Daniel waited until Lily fell asleep again in the stroller, her mitten curled against her cheek. He walked to the vending machine and pressed for 2 coffees. They were terrible but warm. Then he crossed the platform and held one out. She didn't take it at first. Her eyes darted like he might be the next person to hurt her. Then, slowly, she reached out. "Thanks," she whispered. Her voice was paper thin. Her lips cracked when she spoke. He said nothing, just nodded and sat a few feet away on the same bench, not facing her. Lily stirred. He went back, tucked the blanket tighter, then returned. "She likes rabbits," he said softly, pointing to the stuffed one in Lily's arms. The woman blinked. "My daughter. She names them all. That one's Rosie." The woman's mouth tugged, upward just for a second. A smile, half-born, half-forgotten. Then Lily stirred again, awake this time, and toddled toward them with the rabbit outstretched in both hands. "Sad lady," she said in her small voice. "You can borrow Rosie, she helps." The woman blinked rapidly. She didn't cry, but her shoulders lifted on a sharp breath, and for a moment she looked human again, not just ruined. "Thank you," she whispered, and took the rabbit like it was made of glass. Daniel stayed quiet. He didn't ask her name. He didn't ask what had happened. But when he saw the way her fingers were going numb around the paper and coffee, he offered gently, There's a place. Warm. Not far. She looked at him like he'd spoken in a foreign tongue. It's a church hall, he added. I clean there sometimes, they won't mind. A long pause, then she nodded once. The walk to the church was silent, except for Lily's soft humming and the whisper of snow against their coats. The town was still asleep. Only the crunch of their footsteps reminded Daniel that this wasn't a dream. Inside, the hall smelled of old wood and candle wax. He flicked the light on but dimmed it quickly. The soft yellow glow made the room feel smaller, kinder. The radiator near the piano hummed with life. Daniel gestured toward it. She sat, curling into herself. He brought her a dry towel from the cleaning closet, though she barely used it. The wedding dress clung to her like guilt. Do you want to be alone? He asked gently. She shook her head, so he stayed. He set Lily on a padded pew nearby and wrapped a donated quilt around her shoulders. She curled up and fell asleep almost immediately. Then he sat across from the woman. Daniel, he said. She hesitated. Then, Emilia. He nodded, said nothing more. She clutched the rabbit Rosie to her chest. Snow dusted the stained glass windows behind them, and light pooled, in soft colors across the floor. Reds, greens, blues, like old stories no one told anymore. After a long time, she unfolded the paper in her hands and smoothed it against her knee. Daniel didn't look, but he saw the way her eyes watered. I ran, she whispered. He didn't respond, just waited. I was supposed to marry him today, this morning. A shaky breath. Everyone said I should be grateful. 32 and still unmarried. It was like I was a burden being passed off. Daniel nodded, not because he understood, but because he heard her. I left before the vows. No one came after me. She gave a small, brittle laugh. Guess that says everything. Daniel looked down at his hands, the calluses, the cracked skin, then back at her. You're not a burden, he said simply. Her breath caught, and for the first time she cried, not loud, not messy, just silent. Tears that traced old paths down her face. Later, Emilia sat by the radiator, eyes half closed. Daniel leaned against the opposite wall. He didn't know why he hadn't gone home, why he hadn't called someone, but something about her presence didn't feel like an intrusion. It felt unfinished. He glanced toward the pew where Lily slept, her curls haloed in the faint glow from the window. A memory surged. Anna's laugh in this very hall. A church potluck, years ago. He'd spilled lemonade on her skirt and tried to mop it, up with a dinner napkin. She'd laughed so hard he'd fallen for her then and there. He missed her every day. But tonight that ache felt quieter, as though someone else had picked up a small corner of it. The radiator hummed. Emilia exhaled a breath that sounded almost peaceful. He didn't know what would happen tomorrow, or the next day. But tonight, snow fell soft and slow, and the silence between them said enough. They were strangers. They were broken. But here, in the hush of a warm church hall, something had begun. The house was quiet that morning. Pale blue light filtered in through the kitchen blinds, settling in long strips across the cracked tile floor. Daniel stood over the sink, sipping lukewarm coffee that had been reheated twice. He didn't expect her to come back, not really. People in pain didn't tend to return. They drifted. Still, he left the door unlocked. Lily sat cross-legged on the living room carpet, her toys strewn in patterns only she understood. She hadn't asked about the woman in the white dress, only mentioned, quite seriously, that the lady had very sad eyes. Daniel didn't have a reply to that. He rarely did when Lily noticed things adults tried to ignore. He heard the door creak mid-morning. Not knock, not a rustle or footfall, just the low, slow groan of the front door giving. Wait, he didn't look right away. He just listened. Then, I think this belongs to your daughter. Her voice was hoarse but not broken. Daniel turned. She stood there holding out the stuffed rabbit. Its ear was hanging on by a thread. No makeup. Hair a little damp from melted snow. Still in the dress, though she'd thrown a coat over it, a size too large and patched at the elbows. He didn't ask questions. He stepped aside and gestured down the hall. "There's a room upstairs, second on the left." She looked like she might refuse, like pride would catch her before she stepped further in. But she nodded and walked softly up the stairs, the rabbit held against her chest like it might shield her from the world. It was his late wife's sewing room. Nothing had been touched. Spools of thread still lined the shelves. The wedding dress she had altered for a friend years ago still hung behind the door. Daniel hadn't gone in there much lately, but somehow it made sense now. She didn't say, "Thank you." He didn't expect her to. The first morning passed quietly. Amelia emerged barefoot, the hem of the wedding dress cut unevenly now, like she'd tried to make it more manageable. She moved slowly through the kitchen, scanning shelves without asking. She found bread, eggs, burned the toast. Daniel watched from the hallway, unseen for a moment. Watching her move so deliberately, like every gesture had to be earned. Like being useful made her real again. Lily wandered in and handed Amelia a nail polish bottle. "Paint mine?" Amelia looked stunned, but she sat at the table and Lily climbed into the chair opposite her. Shaky hands but gentle, pink polish smeared at the edges. Lily grinned anyway. Later that day, Daniel came home from his janitor shift to find Amelia folding laundry on the couch. It wasn't hers. "You didn't have to do that," he said. She didn't look up. "It helps to do something." He nodded and stepped around her, unsure if it was gratitude he felt, or something quieter, closer to recognition. Evening came, and a rhythm emerged. Tea in chipped mugs, 1 sugar for him, 2 for her. Lily curled up in a blanket by the fire, while Daniel read to her. Amelia stayed silent, her eyes far away but present in the room. The next night they played chess. The pieces didn't match. Half from one set, half from a travel-sized game that was missing a rook. Amelia didn't know the rules. Daniel taught her softly, as the wind whispered against the windows. He began working fewer shifts. Not dramatically, just less. The elementary school gig stayed, but he skipped nights at the garage more often. He didn't explain. No one asked. Some nights, Amelia would sit on the back porch and stare at the stars. Daniel would stand at the sink, washing. The same mug 3 times glancing through the window. The silence between them stretched but never broke. One evening, as Lily slept and the fire dimmed, Amelia finally spoke. "I didn't love him. The man I was supposed to marry." Daniel didn't answer. He waited. He was rich. That mattered. "To my family. He never touched me, never looked at me like I was anything." She rubbed her hands together. "I think he was going to humiliate me. I overheard him talking about it, a bet. Some game maybe, I don't know. I ran before I could find out. I took my suitcase and the dress. I didn't know where else to go." Daniel nodded slowly, his face unreadable. "I sat at that train station for 5 hours. Just sat there, thinking maybe if I waited long enough I'd disappear. I've waited in places like that," he said quietly. She turned to look at him. Really looked, for the first time. He didn't press, didn't ask for more. She didn't offer it, but something passed between them. Acknowledgement, perhaps, or a kind of mutual permission to exist without explanation. The days turned colder. Snow deepened. They settled into something soft and silent. One day, Amelia found herself folding sheets in the hallway. Daniel stood in the bedroom staring at the small wooden drawer beside the bed. Then, without ceremony, he opened it, took out the photo of his wife, and gently placed it into the drawer. Closed it. No words. Just the sound of linen folding and a drawer sliding shut. "If you need to stay longer," Daniel said, not turning around, "we could make it official." She didn't move. Her fingers pressed into the fabric of the pillowcase. She was folding. He didn't say marriage, she didn't say yes, but that night the light in the hallway stayed on, and she didn't leave. Lily sat patiently as Amelia brushed her hair, soft brown waves parting under gentle fingers. The humming had started without thought, low, slow, something Amelia barely recognized. A lullaby from childhood, maybe. One her mother sang on rare, tender evenings. Today it slipped from her lips without resistance. You're good at that, Lily murmured. Amelia smiled faintly. I had sisters once. Daniel was in the kitchen leaning over the table, pen poised over a notepad. He'd been staring at it for 10 minutes, chewing the inside of his cheek, then finally scribbled something, folded the paper, and tucked it into his coat pocket without rereading it. He heard the brush strokes upstairs, the rise and fall of that quiet humming, and something in his chest loosened. Amelia opened the wardrobe and paused. Most of the clothes in the room weren't hers. The sewing room had quietly transformed into a resting place for the past. Old scarves, a few dresses, faded sweaters that still held traces of perfume. She ran her fingers over hangers until one caught her eye. Soft yellow, simple, worn thin at the shoulders. She knew, without needing to ask, that it had once belonged to Daniel's wife. She stood there a long while, fingers clutching the fabric. Then, breathing in through her nose and out through her mouth, she slipped it off the hanger. It fit like a whisper. They didn't plan anything. Daniel had simply asked, "Do you think today's the day?" Amelia had nodded, and now they stood beneath a peeling sign that read County Registrar's Office. The windows fogged from inside, the world outside muffled in soft snow. Inside it was quiet. A kind old woman with a silver bun and mismatched earrings greeted them with a smile. Here for the civil ceremony. Daniel nodded. Amelia tried to smile back. They filled out the forms at a small desk, its corner stacked with pens that didn't work. The clerk handed them a new set of papers and Amelia's fingers trembled as she signed. Her hand faltered halfway through. The pen jerked slightly, leaving a blot of ink at the end of her name. She inhaled sharply and blinked too fast. Daniel reached over, his hand closing gently over hers. He didn't say anything, just steadied her hand and waited until she was ready. She finished the signature. Lily, who had found a handful of old petals from a wilted bouquet outside, flung them into the air with a triumphant grin. Ta-da! The clerk chuckled. That's a first. They didn't kiss. They didn't exchange rings. They just stood there, leaning in, foreheads touching. The kind of stillness that doesn't beg for ceremony. A quiet agreement. A shared breath. The clerk, with surprising tenderness, gave them a small embossed envelope. For safekeeping, she said, nodding at the certificate within. Back at the church hall, the windows rattled with wind, but inside, it was warm with memory. Amelia lit candles along the old wooden shelf. The smell of melted wax filled the space, familiar and grounding. Daniel searched through a milk crate of records and pulled one out. He blew dust from the sleeve and placed it on the turntable. Soft jazz crackled through the room. She used to dance to this, he murmured, not looking at Amelia. I can see that. They didn't dance. They just stood nearby, existing in the same warmth. After a while, Amelia pulled a folded paper from her pocket. She glanced at Lily, who was building towers from stacked hymnals. Then she opened the letter. I wrote this when I was 17, she said, her voice a little unsteady. I didn't think I'd ever read it aloud, she began. Someday, someone will see you, not just the shell of you, not the girl who follows rules or the one who tries too hard. Someone will notice the tremble when you smile, the way you count, cracks in sidewalks, how you hold your breath when walking through doors. Someday you'll be seen. When she finished, she folded the letter again with care. Daniel stepped forward and retrieved the note from his coat pocket. It was small, barely a torn square from his notepad. He handed it to her. She read it silently. You were always meant to be here. She didn't cry, but her eyes shone with something close to forgiveness. Later they stepped outside. The snow was falling again, light and lazy like the first day. The wind was calmer now, brushing against their coats rather than biting. Lily skipped ahead, then turned and marched back to them with a determined expression. She held out her scarf. Hands. They obeyed, both holding out one hand each. She wrapped the scarf around them, her tongue sticking out slightly in concentration. There, she said. Now you're stuck together. Amelia laughed. It startled even her. A bright, surprised sound. They stood like that, still wrapped as the snow piled gently around their boots. No rush, no destination. Just there. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of everything unspoken. Shared grief, new hope, gratefulness too deep for language. Amelia closed her eyes, breathing in the cold and the comfort beside her. "I wasn't unwanted," she whispered. "Just unseen." Daniel, still holding her hand beneath the scarf, replied quietly, "Not anymore," and with the snow falling soft as memory, they stayed. The tulips bloomed in crooked rows under the window, some leaning too far to the left, others crowding one another like eager children. Amelia knelt beside them in the late spring sun, dirt under her nails and a smudge of soil across her cheek. She didn't know if she was doing it right. But when Lily pressed her nose against the window and waved, giggling at the sight of her muddy hands, Amelia figured it didn't matter. Inside, crayons rolled across the floor as Lily worked on another family portrait. This one had 3 figures again. Amelia in a dress, Daniel with his square shoulders and wild hair, and Lily in the middle, all in pink with a crooked crown on her head. Daniel had started humming, not full songs, just notes under his breath when he carried groceries or stood at the sink. Sometimes it was the jazz tune from their wedding day, sometimes something Amelia didn't recognize, but the sound of it curled gently through the house like steam from morning tea. The house had changed. It smelled like cinnamon now, and laundry soap. And sometimes, in the quiet between dusk and dinner, like hope. There were still signs of the past. His late wife's books still lined the shelf, her sewing basket, untouched. But beside them, Amelia had added little things. A pressed flower in a frame, a wooden spoon her grandmother once used, a scarf Lily had knitted from uneven yarn. Nothing loud, just additions. Gentle layers. One afternoon, while organizing drawers in the spare room, Amelia found a bundle of letters tied with a pale blue ribbon. The handwriting was slanted and steady. Daniel's. She didn't open them, not at first. She sat on the floor with the bundle in her lap, heart thudding. She knew what they were, words written for someone else, a different life. When Daniel found her there, she held them up silently. He looked at the bundle, then at her. "You can read them if you want." She nodded but didn't. Instead, she wrote one of her own. Not to him, not to anyone living, just a letter to the girl she used to be, the one sitting in a train station with nowhere to go. She folded it and tied it with the same blue ribbon. Together they placed it in a small wooden box under their bed. A ritual was born. Every so often they'd add to the collection. Notes to old selves, to past loves, to people they might never meet. It wasn't sad, not anymore. It was honoring, in the gentlest way. Then Lily got sick. It started with a cough, then a fever that rose too fast. Amelia didn't sleep that night. She sat beside the bed with a cool cloth, whispering lullabies and brushing sweat from Lily's brow. Her body stayed calm, but her mind screamed. Daniel stood outside on the porch. He couldn't watch, couldn't sit and feel helpless like before. The wood beneath him creaked with every step he didn't take. Hours passed. Amelia came outside, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She didn't say anything, just draped half of it over his back and leaned against him. He didn't cry, neither did she. But their silence stretched wide and soft, like something shared. In the morning, Lily opened her eyes. Her cheeks were flushed, but her smile was bright. "Mommy," the word slipped out so naturally that no one corrected her. Amelia nodded, tears finally spilling as she laughed through them. "Yes, baby. I'm here." The world righted itself slowly after that. Meals resumed. Laughter crept back in. And then a year passed. On the anniversary of their wedding, the quiet one with petals and no rings, they went to the train station. It looked the same, a little lonelier without the snow. Emilia stood near the bench where she once sat with Lily in her lap, running from nothing and everything. She bent down and placed a single white flower beside it. For someone else, she murmured. Daniel looked at her. Someone else? Someone who needs a little hope. He nodded. They didn't linger. They walked back toward the car, hand in hand. Lily skipped between them, counting cracks in the sidewalk just like Emilia used to. The sun was just beginning to set, casting a honey-colored glow across the rooftops. The house would be waiting, warm, lit from the inside. Not perfect, but real. Something lived in that space between silence and belonging. It grew slow, then all at once, like roots under soil, like love that didn't announce itself but stayed. Some things aren't planned. Some things are just found and held onto. If this story touched you, subscribe or share where you're watching from. These stories matter. Sometimes the softest beginnings lead to the strongest love.